So the discipline is extremely important. One of the ways that certain people on our board think that would benefit all of us if we thought about different ways to bring maybe debt or equity or strategic partnerships in. I think the idea of a strategic partnership is great because that's sort of, you know, a mixture of usually equity and payment for some kind of services. And I'll just say that it used to be that we were asked to please go look at strategic partnerships in other countries because they are offering a lot of opportunity in the form of equity and debt to put your company there and fill up their business parks. And in this space and time, now we've also been asked to pull back on that idea. So what we're thinking about is your competitive advantage lies in how you manage your resources, whether it's people, whether it's cash, in the form of revenue. And our strategy, and this goes for any early company, is use your cash, which for us is debt and equity, to get to actual revenue as fast as possible. Streamline your path to revenue, and that should be your strategy.
You're okay? I liked one of the phrases you used, Pam. You said, equity and debt sticks with you. And interestingly, and it does in so many ways. But in many of our industries, the revenue-generating vehicle is collaborations and collaboration revenue. And collaborations stick with you too. A collaboration partner is very often a multi-year relationship. We've been very fortunate. We have a relationship with Gilead Sciences, Foster City, California, and it's been a fabulous collaboration. But I think many of us have seen collaborations that have not worked as well. I think you think long and hard and think strategically about the collaboration partners you choose. Cash coming from one collaboration partner is going to be far more expensive than cash coming from a different one. And that just a word of caution about those kinds of things.
Well, for me, one of our earliest and most important strategic decisions was, given that we were initially self-funded, we had no money to spend on advertising, and so we went out and sought partners, and we were, again, it was a wonderful time. My husband and I got on a plane with our dog, and we flew to the West Coast, and we knocked on doors, starting with Yahoo, all the way to Pointcast and every other financial information company, and wound up with 250 to 350 really important strategic partnerships where no money changed hands, and our entire business and all of our cash flow grew out of those relationships, and they were an incredibly important part of our corporate culture, which our partners were vitally important to us, and you didn't know in the early days who was going to survive and who wasn't. We treated everyone wonderfully, and we were really good. We were very good partners, and we continue to be, extremely. Edgar Online continues to be very, very careful and very selective in choosing partners, and not necessarily for the cash component, but with a really hard look as to how the strategies are really going to remain aligned.
One of the questions before we get to the key nugget of advice is if you look at prioritization and maintaining cash, but at the same time building value in your business, how would you advise you manage the conflict with that? It was a building value, but still having to.
I think it's going to be different for everybody. I don't think there's one answer that fits everybody, but I think in our case, I think well, when we say that be disciplined, it doesn't mean not spend money. But I think you need to be careful about, I think in our industry, what we saw in the last few years, for example, was a lot of people just throwing money in advertising, let's say, to sort of buy market share, hoping that it sticks. I mean, in the good times when you had a lot of, cash and your VC or your private equity investor was willing to fund you indefinitely, that may work. But, I think now it may not. But I think I guess what I'm saying is that spend the money, as Pam said, to get to revenue opportunities and very specific revenue opportunities. You can't just kind of throw things out there hoping that it sticks, because that won't work. And I think in terms of the people investment, I think you need to be very, very careful about keeping your key talents during these times as well, because at the end of the day, I think people are what drives businesses. You could actually do a lot with, smaller number of people sometimes if you incentivize them right and keep up the morale at the company, because I think, there will be a lot of companies that are going to be facing difficult, people decisions. And your company may be one of those. But again, you got to focus on, the high potential, the key talent within the organization that make the difference, and make sure that you keep them happy, because they're the guys that are actually going to lead you to the revenue generation opportunities and investments that make sense. So I think that would be how I would try to balance that a little bit.
Wow. So I have a weakness that I'll just say up front, and that I was trained as a scientist, and so I'm not very good at sound bites, and that can hurt you in some situations, but help you in other situations. So I want to give you an answer, but I don't want to give you sound bites. So I'll tell you when you have to listen really carefully. So this is the way we think about it. We think about it in not spending cash or saving cash. We think about it as extending the runway. How many more months can we keep our company going? And what are the steps that we have to take to do that? Versus, essentially, what are the things that we're going to spend money on to build value in our company versus the fastest path to revenue? Now this is where you have to really listen carefully. Fastest path to revenue versus build value in your company aren't always the same thing. And you have to be very both clever and forward-thinking in order to understand where your value lies and either maintain it, capture it, use it, build it at the same time that you're heading to revenue and extending your runway. And that is, very specific to the kind of company you are.
This is a tough question for all companies, obviously, but it's particularly tough for us. I think my company particularly has a reputation for being very careful. I have a very, despite being very sales-oriented, I have a very fiscally careful CEO that I work with. And in that respect, it helps things, because there's always been this tension in organizations, the sales team wanting to spend money, and the financial organization trying to say, no, you have to maintain resources. I think we have a much more seamless integration there, but I do agree that it's about getting to next milestone and being very analyzing each expenditure to say what value driving milestone will this get it to. For example, we just analyzed a debt facility that was exceptionally expensive, and in doing the analysis, we realized it was not going to drive our runway sufficiently to get us to the next milestone, and so we passed on putting that in place. So I think that's kind of the analysis that you have to go through. It's trying to get to the next value-creating milestone.
Well, from my Edgar Online perspective, the major focus was on people, people were 90% of our resources, both our technology people and our core people, many of whom have been there for 14 years and 15 years, and there's real value in that. As part of the startup now, all I can say is I'm spending as little money as possible. I'm spending negative money as possible. I'm working very hard on myself, and runway is, a day at a time.
On the human capital side, I couldn't agree more with everyone on the panel, and talent is so important. And I've seen over the last couple months a way to turn this challenging time maybe into an opportunity when it comes to human capital. There are, unfortunately, a lot of really good, talented people out there that may not be in full-time employ, but they're incredibly smart and could match your businesses. And for several of the companies that I'm working with, we have tapped into that pool to bring people on for special projects. So it is pretty innovative as how you look at your cost structure so that you are able to kind of keep your cost structure lean, but at the same time tap into a dynamic pool of human capital out there. And then sort of you weather the storm, and as we've said to several of the companies that I'm on the boards of, you know, we want to continue with innovation. We will continue to look at how things change, and if things are starting to move, you need to be agile enough to do that. And during this time, you have then formed relationships with incredibly great talent that at that particular time, you can just push the button, so you're not out there, where do I go? And so I think a lot of it is being able to be agile in this marketplace today and being innovative in a new way, in a different way.
All right. So let me just run through something about human capital, and that is that, you know, be out there on the lookout for what's great, but be very aware of what you have in your own backyard and make sure that you see them as assets and work to keep them happy. And it could be something as simple as, you know, you don't have to fly economy, you get to fly business class if what you do is on the road all the time. It might be something as simple as, you know, flexible time, you know, more responsibility, less responsibility. I mean, it's really a challenge to keep in tune with every single aspect of your, you know, employees' needs and wants and being able to separate the two of those. But it's really critical at this time because other companies that are in trouble are actually trying to lure them away because they see really great people making a huge impact, and those are the kind of people they want. And I'll say this, and maybe I can save it until we talk about our, you know, our nugget. but I will say that. I'll just say this outright, and I'll tell you why it has to do with people. That is that in several of the last board meetings, since the economy has been such an issue, the takeaway message I've been getting from our investors, and I think this is going to be a critical point to everybody in this room looking for money, is that there's plenty of money on the sidelines. I mean, one of our venture investors just raised an $800 million fund. But they actually think about companies, you know, maybe in 3 to 4 ways. What companies would they fund? What companies they'll watch where they're marching in place? And what companies they're going to put money into? And you have to know the way that they think about how your company would fit into which bucket. You don't want to be a company people don't want to fund. But there's a lot of talent out there that can actually help you understand what people are looking for in a given sector for funding your company. And you have to have those people in place because in the end, investors invest in people, not as much in technology or the fantastic idea.
We've been wonderfully surprised in mining the talent within our organization. We've had, in response to the economic times, not been rehiring positions that have, through attrition, but tapping skill sets in ways that, you know, amongst the people who are already there, and incentivizing them to take on more responsibilities and rewarding them when they're successful. And we've been wonderfully surprised in the level of responsibility people have taken on, as well as the creativity they've brought to their now broadened roles. So we've had a lot of luck in that. But I will just jump to the nugget because it has to do with human capital as well. Is that, you know, somebody asked me, you know, what the most important skill set is, and I think in this economic time, somebody else was mentioning 2000, and you can see for people who've been in emerging businesses for a very long time, you can see the ebbs and flows, and it seems like tenacity is the skill set that we forget about. That dogged, it's gonna, you know, we're gonna stick through this mentality has to be there. I was interviewing a candidate for a position recently, and when I shared that I had been with my current company for 8 years. I surprised myself that it was 8 years. But his first comment was, and it kind of shocked me, he said, "Why the hell are you still here?" And I was taken aback by the fact that he said that, and I was taken aback by the number of years myself. But then I started realizing, over 8 years, it's been 4 different companies. It's absolutely been 4 different sets of challenges, 4 different things to overcome, and it's been that willingness to ride with the ebbs and the flows, and knowing that you're gonna come out of this on the other side, to employ all the strategic skills you have, and you can bring to bear with all your advisors and everybody else. But if I can say anything about human capital, it's finding these people who are just dogged about doing what they want to do.
Susan?
Nuggets?
Nuggets?
Well, my first nugget is that content is king, even more than maybe equally. And trusted content in particular, which I think is something that will get to be discussed, I think, probably more today. And I have a very strong feeling that and I'm focusing on content in my space, is that the winners in media, the winners in information are people who know how to purvey trusted content, and that's, I think that's an important thing in a world where everybody is an author suddenly. And the other piece is that execution, or tenacity, but that execution is number 1, number 2, and all the way to number 10. You get up every day and you just push that rock one step up that mountain. And that's to me the most important thing.
Yeah, I guess I would add that in more difficult times, I think one of the things I think as managers or leaders or entrepreneurs, I think in terms of dealing with people, I think you really have to be very open and honest about what the company's situation is. Because I think a lot of people, it's the uncertainty that scares them. It's not the reality maybe that you're in a hard time. It's the uncertainty that really scares people. So I think that's something that I think leaders and entrepreneurs should bear that in mind. There will be challenges that the company will face together, and you'll come out stronger for it if you're open and honest with your people. And I think everyone has said that people are very flexible. You'll be surprised what people can come up with in difficult times, because everyone's kind of rallying around that concept as well. For us, I mean, Mary Kay said that she's been with the company 8 years, myself too, more than 8 years actually, so I totally share your views. And I've had sort of probably like 5, 8 jobs during this time. And that's been good, but I think your people can go through that as well, just as we have. I think, going through that public event, if you will, it was a morale boosting event for the company, for the employees. But at the same time, it was a validation event for their achievements, their accomplishment. But, in this difficult time, if you will, if you can weather that, that can also be that same event. So I think, I encourage people to be very open about the challenges the companies face, and use that as an opportunity, really, to rally the forces as well. So be open, be honest, and don't be afraid to kind of disclose the uncertainties or, the things that you just don't know what happened, because no one can control what markets are doing or volatility, and that's okay, I think. So, great.
Well, I want to thank each and every one of you, and I hope you all took away something great from this. Thank you.